Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. It was a Wednesday, the kind of day no one remembers. Gray sky, burnt toast, her usual iced coffee order I got wrong again. I stood in our bedroom folding her lacy red underwear, the pair I hadn't seen her wear for me in over a year. She used to blush when I touched them. Now they came back from weekends at her sister's, smelling like a stranger's cologne and cheap hotel soap. She walked past me that morning humming, towel-wrapped, dripping on the floor like I wasn't there. I don't think she even realized I was holding the proof of her betrayal in my hands. That's when I decided. The next time she walked by me, I wouldn't be there. She wouldn't know it then, but that was the last time she'd ever see me. No big fight, no screaming, no breakup playlist echoing through the walls. I didn't even slam the door. Instead, I made a plan. A plan to disappear so completely from her world, she'd question if I'd ever existed at all. But I wasn't just running away. I was building something. Quietly, carefully, while she sent goodnight texts to the man saved as Dr. Ellis in her phone. She thought she was clever. But I had time. I started by deleting myself in pixels, removing tags from her posts, unlinking our calendars, slowly draining our shared accounts. I'd fake being forgetful. Oh, did I cancel the Wi-Fi by mistake? Weird. I thought you already paid the car insurance. She was too busy texting in the bathroom to notice. Then came the vanishing act. I stopped leaving notes. I stopped cooking dinner. I stopped reacting. One day, I watched her stare at my side of the bed like she wasn't sure when I'd stopped sleeping there. That was the beginning. In 46 days, I went from being her doormat to being her ghost. And when I finally left, no letter, no warning, no trace, she fell into chaos. She turned to detectives, hospitals, even the morgue. But I wasn't dead. I became invisible with a purpose. Because before she could bury me in lies, I had one last truth to show her. The first week after I vanished, I watched from a distance, literally. I rented a tiny Airbnb across the park from our apartment complex. Through binoculars I borrowed from a pawn shop, I could see the flicker of lights from our old place, hear the muffled echoes of her voice when the window was open, watch her pacing in circles like a dog that lost its owner. Except I wasn't lost. I was watching, waiting, recording. She didn't cry the first night. She poured a glass of red wine and scrolled on her phone for hours, probably texting him, probably telling him I finally cracked, maybe laughing, maybe relieved. I wondered if they toasted to my absence. But then came the third day. She tried calling me 8 times. I didn't answer. Then came the texts. Where are you? We need to talk. If this is about last weekend, you're overreacting. Don't make this dramatic. I smiled. For the first time in months, I actually smiled. Because the storm hadn't even started yet. You see, disappearing wasn't just a stunt. I wasn't hiding in the woods journaling about my feelings. I had a mission, and it started with truth. Back when I found out about her affair, I didn't just sulk. I learned. I researched. I documented everything. The receipts from the boutique hotel. The selfies she stupidly took in front of a mirror wearing lingerie I didn't buy. The emails. The deleted texts. The phone records. Even a copy of the apartment's key fob entries. She came home at 4:17 a.m. on a Monday, claiming her coworker just needed a friend. For months, I played the fool while building a digital fortress of evidence. And now, from my little Airbnb lair, I started letting pieces of it leak. An anonymous email to her HR department. A screenshot sent to her sister. A video blurry but clear enough of her kissing a man who was definitely not her yoga instructor. Each day she woke up to another invisible poke from the ghost of the man she betrayed. And every time she tried to call, I'd watch her lips form my name through the window, her frustration boiling. She slammed her phone against the table, screamed into a pillow, even broke a mug once, my favorite one, ironically. She wasn't sad I was gone. She was terrified of what else I might know. Because here's the truth she never expected. I never wanted revenge. I wanted her to feel something real for once. To know what it's like when the world stops answering. When silence becomes unbearable. When the person you dismissed becomes the shadow you can't outrun. I didn't vanish out of weakness. I disappeared to become unavoidable. And that was just the beginning. By the end of week 2, Juniper looked like someone sleepwalking through a nightmare. I watched her from a distance. Same park bench, same binoculars, same hoodie pulled over my head. She wasn't glowing anymore. The woman who once floated through rooms like she owned every man's gaze now moved like she was being watched. And she was. But what she didn't know was that I wasn't the only one watching her anymore. I had started what I called the whisper campaign. No accusations. No confrontations. Just anonymous truths sent to the right people at just the right time. It began with her mother. Polite email, no sender. Just a link to a private cloud folder with no explanation. Only videos, screenshots, copies of text messages with her friend Bryce, who, for the record, was married too. Then I sent another folder to Bryce's wife. She opened it. How do I know? Because 24 hours later, Bryce's Facebook relationship status went from married to nothing. All his pictures with his wife disappeared. Juniper's page too. It was like dominoes. I wasn't trying to ruin lives. I was just releasing the weight I carried, redistributing the burden, if you will. But it was Juniper's reaction that truly fed my resolve. When she met with Bryce at the park one morning, she didn't hold his hand. She didn't kiss him. She was panicked, agitated. She grabbed his arm and hissed something while scanning the area around her like a criminal waiting for sirens. I didn't need audio. I could read her face. She was unraveling. And then, 2 days later, she went to the police. They came to our building. I watched it all unfold from my safe little vantage point. She filed a missing person report. I saw her hand them an old picture of me. One where I looked 10 pounds heavier and 10 times more naive. She cried. It looked forced. Maybe she was scared they'd start looking into her instead. Maybe she realized that if I was really gone, there would be questions. And those questions might lead to things she'd rather keep buried. That same night, I received a voicemail from a detective. He sounded calm, professional, and vaguely skeptical. He asked if I was safe, said they just needed to confirm I wasn't in danger. I didn't answer, obviously. I wanted Juniper to sit with the idea that maybe, just maybe, she had driven me to a breaking point. That her affair, her lies, her dismissal of me as just a nice guy with no spark, had cost more than just a marriage. And still, I wasn't done. I knew Juniper, knew her patterns, knew how much she hated being perceived as anything less than perfect. So the next step? Hit her where it would hurt most, her reputation. I printed out one of the texts she sent to Bryce. The one that said, "He's so pathetic he'd probably thank us for cheating if we invited him to join." Then I mailed it, in an envelope, no return address, to her manager. I don't know what came of it. But 3 days later, Juniper didn't go to work. Instead, she sat on the floor of our living room, my former living room, rocking back and forth, staring at her phone like it held a curse she couldn't undo. And still, she hadn't figured out who was behind it. Because ghosts don't leave fingerprints. They leave echoes. The idea came to me while watching her water the succulents I bought her 2 birthdays ago. The ones she told her friends she hated but kept to be polite. She overwatered them. Typical. She never really listened. She just liked the performance of caring. That's when I realized. She didn't need another confrontation. What she needed was to feel what I had lived with for years. Confusion, doubt, paranoia. I wasn't going to haunt her with rage. I was going to haunt her with subtlety. So I started small. The first thing I did was cancel her hair appointment. Easy. I'd booked it for her using my email, and she never changed the account. She showed up to the salon, ready for her usual overpriced balayage, and they told her she wasn't on the list. I watched her through the salon window as her face dropped and she argued with the receptionist, trying to keep her cool but losing it, little by little. She left red-faced and empty-handed, fingers flying over her phone, probably texting me something angry, something I'd never read. Next, I had a pizza delivered to her office. Nothing sinister, just a plain cheese pie with a note that read, "You don't deserve toppings." Her assistant opened it. Everyone laughed. She didn't. The prank didn't trace back to me, but it felt like me. She knew it. You could see it in her eyes. That flicker of fear. That dreadful realization that maybe the person she discarded was still very much in control. By the 4th week, I noticed her posting less on social media. The glossy selfies vanished. No more yoga studio check-ins. No more filtered sunset shots captioned healing. She was shrinking, imploding. And it wasn't because of what I was doing. It was because she knew someone was doing something, and that someone could only be me. But she couldn't prove it. And that powerlessness, that silence pressing against her skin every hour of the day, that was what she gave me for years. I made sure her favorite mug disappeared from the kitchen. I kept a copy of the apartment's key. Don't ask how, I had my ways. One night while she was out, likely crying on Bryce's shoulder, I snuck in. I didn't take anything valuable. I didn't break anything. I just moved 3 things slightly out of place. Her alarm clock was turned toward the wall, her slippers switched sides under the bed, and her mug, the one that said "Too glam to give a damn," was gone. She came home to a house that felt off, unfamiliar, unsafe. She called the police again that night. I listened to the recording later. She said, "I think someone's in my head." The dispatcher asked if anything was stolen. "No," she said. "But something isn't right. I know it." That line stayed with me. I know it. That's what I had screamed silently every day I was with her. Every time she looked through me. Every time she gaslit me into thinking I was too sensitive, too paranoid, too boring to deserve her love. Now she was saying it out loud. And finally, someone was listening. But we were only halfway through. She still had no idea how deep this would go. I wasn't done making her question the foundation of her own story. Because the next part, that's when the truth would stop whispering and start screaming. By the time week 5 rolled around, Juniper wasn't just unraveling. She was on the edge of something irreversible. You could see it in how she walked. That confident sway she used to have, the one that turned heads at every party, was gone. She moved like she was afraid of shadows now, afraid of being watched. That was the point. Because I wanted her to realize what it feels like when trust isn't broken with a bang, but eroded with silence, slowly, until every part of your reality feels warped. I watched her install new locks on the door, a camera above the peephole. She even bought a motion detector lamp for the hallway. She didn't know that I hadn't stepped foot in that apartment since the last time. I didn't need to. The psychological part had already taken root. I had planted the seed weeks ago. And now she was watering it with her own fear. So I escalated. Not with anything illegal. No, that's not my game. I was done playing by the rules she used to manipulate. This was about guilt, exposure, and silence. My tools were memory, truth, and timing. I created a fake Instagram account under the name @mbrycegone. I didn't follow anyone. I didn't comment. I just posted a single blurry image each day. A photo taken from a distance. Her at the grocery store. Her at the pharmacy. Her leaving work early. All with one cryptic caption. "You're not alone." The account had no followers. But I sent it to her personal inbox anonymously. She blocked it immediately. But the damage was done. 2 days later, she called her sister in tears. I could tell from the way she gripped her phone and whispered into it in the back corner of the coffee shop where she always went for comfort. I didn't have audio, but I didn't need it. Her body language spoke volumes. She was cracking. And for the first time, she had no one to lean on. Bryce had gone quiet. Her sister had grown cold. Her co-workers avoided her. Because everyone had seen at least a sliver of the truth by now. I made sure of that. The whispers were working. Her reputation, her carefully curated identity, was bleeding out, and no one came to stop it. But the most satisfying part? She still didn't know if I was alive. One night, I left a typed letter at her door. No envelope, no signature, just one line in 16-point bold. This is what it feels like when the person you betray starts telling their story. I watched from the stairwell as she opened it. Her hands were shaking. She dropped the letter like it burned her. Then she turned and kicked the door shut so hard it rattled the frame. I didn't follow her. I didn't need to, because in that moment she finally understood. This wasn't about revenge. This was about reflection. And she was finally starting to see the monster wasn't the man who disappeared. It was the mirror she avoided every time she smiled through a lie. By the 6th week, I didn't have to lift a finger anymore. Her life was falling apart under the weight of its own dishonesty. All I had to do was watch it collapse. From the outside, it looked almost poetic, like she was finally living inside the chaos she once created in others. Her phone calls got shorter. Her makeup routine vanished. She stopped brushing her hair the same way. Even the neighbors started whispering that she looked haunted. The day I realized she was truly breaking was when I saw her outside our old apartment complex arguing with Bryce. They weren't lovers anymore. They were two people blaming each other for a mess they both helped build. Her voice cracked as she shouted, and he just stood there, hands in his pockets, shaking his head like he'd finally seen who she really was. It was almost satisfying, but also a little sad. Because that's the thing, when you love someone as deeply as I once loved her, even watching them drown doesn't make you feel victorious. It makes you wonder why you ever tried to save them. I'd left the city for a few days by then, staying in a cheap cabin 2 hours away. No internet, no noise, just the sound of rain on the roof and my own thoughts chasing me through sleepless nights. I thought disappearing would bring me peace. Didn't. I'd become the ghost I wanted her to see, but even ghosts get tired of haunting. Still, I couldn't stop watching from a distance. It was like a sickness. The need to know how far she'd fall before she hit bottom. Then something unexpected happened. She reached out to my family. She told my sister she thought I'd taken my own life. She even brought flowers to my parents' house, crying, saying she never meant for things to go this far. My mother, bless her soul, actually comforted her. The woman who broke me stood in my childhood living room, pretending to be the grieving widow of a man who wasn't dead. My mother called me that night, her voice trembling, saying, "Emery, whatever you're doing, stop. She's falling apart." And for a moment I hesitated. I looked in the mirror of that tiny cabin and barely recognized myself. The man staring back looked thinner, colder, lonelier. Maybe Juniper had destroyed more than my marriage. Maybe she'd infected my soul. But when I saw her the next day posting a photo of herself holding those same flowers with the caption, "He'll always be my person," that hesitation died on the spot. She wasn't grieving. She was performing, just like always, turning pain into pity, lies into sympathy, guilt into applause. That was when I made my decision. It was time to end this the way it started. Not with fury, not with noise, but with silence. Only this time, the silence wouldn't be mine. It would be hers. I waited until midnight. Not because it was symbolic, not because of some dramatic flair. I just knew she wouldn't expect anything after dark. I returned to the city quietly, driving a borrowed car with the lights off 2 blocks from the apartment. I didn't go inside. I didn't need to. Everything was already set in motion. Earlier that day, I'd mailed out 6 thick envelopes. One went to her HR department. One to the director of her yoga studio where she'd recently started working part-time. The others went to a few of her closest friends, carefully selected, the ones she'd manipulated into thinking I was unstable, controlling, emotionally unavailable. Inside each envelope was the full timeline. Hotel receipts, screenshot folders, copies of the emails she deleted but I had backed up from our shared cloud years ago, when I still believed in saving everything just in case. But the real punch, that was in the flash drive. I included a single video file. I'd never planned to use it, but after everything, after she pretended to mourn me in my parents' living room, I decided she deserved to see herself from the outside. It was a security cam clip from a hotel hallway. Juniper, pressed against the wall, kissing Bryce like she didn't have a husband waiting at home. At the end of the video, she looked directly into the lens, smiling. She must have known there were cameras. She didn't care. Maybe she thought she was invincible. I wanted her to remember that moment when her world stopped being hers. The fallout was quick. I didn't see it happen in real time, but I read it in the silences. The next day, her social media vanished. Not deactivated. Wiped. Her yoga job disappeared from her LinkedIn. Even Bryce's wife, who'd remained silent all this time, posted a scathing "truth will always find its way out" story, tagging both of them. I didn't share it. I didn't even like it. I just watched it burn from the shadows. And that voicemail I'd been saving for the end? I finally sent it. It was a recording of her, from a fight months before everything collapsed. In it, she yelled at me, saying, "You're lucky I haven't left you for someone exciting." Then she laughed. A cruel, sharp laugh that had stabbed me in the ribs every time I remembered it. I emailed that audio to her with no subject line, no message body. Just the clip. I don't know what happened after she listened to it, but a few hours later, I checked the doorbell camera one last time. She was sitting on the front steps, barefoot, in her robe, staring into nothing. No phone, no crying, just stillness. For the first time in her life, she wasn't surrounded by applause, followers, or excuses. She wasn't lying, blaming, performing. She was quiet. That's when I knew it was over. Not because she was broken, but because I was finally free. I didn't watch her anymore after that night. No more binoculars. No more emails. No more backdoors into our old life. I turned off the notifications, deleted the backup folders, even threw away the burner phone I used to keep everything coordinated. Because it was done. She wasn't the same woman I married anymore, and truthfully, I wasn't the same man who married her either. I stayed gone. Not because I was afraid of what would happen if I returned, but because I finally understood the value of my own peace. Disappearing hadn't been a punishment for her. It was a rescue mission for me. I started over in a quiet town a few states away. Rented a small place with creaky floors and too many windows. It's not glamorous, but it's mine. I work at a bookstore now. The kind with coffee stains on the counter and handwritten staff pics. Nobody knows me here. And for the first time in years, I don't feel invisible, I feel unbothered. There's a difference. The weight I carried? It's gone. I left it behind with her yoga mat and those lies she thought would stay buried. I don't need revenge, pity, or closure from her anymore. She gave me something better than any apology ever could. She gave me a clean break. Some nights I still think about her. I wonder if she ever figured out how close she came to ruining someone permanently. But I don't linger in that place. I've started dating again, slowly, cautiously. I'm learning how to laugh without wondering if I'm being laughed at. I cook just for myself now, and somehow it tastes better than it ever did when I cooked for two. I sleep alone, but I sleep peacefully. That's worth something. So if you're listening to this and you've been pushed to the edge, wondering if disappearing is weakness, it's not. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is choose yourself over someone who never really saw you. Thank you for listening to my story. And now I want to hear from you. What moment shocked you the most? The burner phone? The letter on the doorstep? The Instagram account? Drop it in the comments. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to Reddit Confessions. Because sometimes the realest stories aren't the loudest ones. They're the ones told by those who chose silence.